This is the Huey Alert Podcast with Craig and Shelley Huey.
Hi, welcome to the Huey Alert Podcast, and we're here in West Palm Beach, Florida, with my beautiful bride, Shelley.
Hey, everyone.
And we're so glad you're with us. And we're here at the Free Speech Investment Summit. And I'm so excited. I'm excited, honey, about who I'm about ready to interview. Devin Nunes. Welcome.
Craig and Shelley, great to be with you.
I want to ask you about one other thing that you're doing, and that is I had the opportunity of trying some of your wine.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
And I was blown away how it was a high-quality wine. Tell us about that.
Well,
how did you get into that?
I grew up in it.
That was such a surprise that this was your wine.
Yeah, I grew up in it. My mom's father grew grapes in the San Joaquin Valley of California. And so I grew up in it, always enjoyed it. When I went to college, I took classes just for fun. And it was at the time when
Where'd you go to school?
Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
No way. I went there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and when you said that you took classes, I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's the few ag schools in California that have good viticulture programs, and Cal Poly was one of them.
Cal Poly's like the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it was also at the time when the wine industry was just starting to flourish there. Well, you'll enjoy it. You'll remember this because your background. It was actually Reagan. Ronald Reagan had a place in Santa Barbara.
Yep.
And some of the early wines there, he really enjoyed. Matter of fact, there was one of the early plantings was a guy named Gary Eberly. He's still alive.
Right.
Still has a winery there. He was one of the
amazing winery.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You know the winery.
Oh, I know the winery and know the wine.
When Eberly was young, a young man, he started that up. Reagan loved his wine.
Yeah.
And he actually served his wine in the White House.
Really?
And so you got to remember that was in the 70s when he started that project. I think he was one of the first ones to plant there in Paso Robles. And then, of course, fast forward, because Reagan used to ride horses out.
Right.
That's how I think he got to know. I think this was after he was governor. And maybe right at the beginning of time he was governor, some of those plantings occurred, but then Reagan spent a lot of time out there in the 70s and watched that happen. He used to ride horses through.
Right.
So that area, so think of fast forward, I'm in school in the 90s.
Right.
In the early 90s and going to the university. And the wine industry is really just starting to, now it's getting real and there's more and more wineries coming in. But it was always Napa had the allure. It had been established for a longer period of time. So the bottom line is it's, I guess you ask why, it's just something that I enjoy. It's really my only hobby. I got into it young. I've always enjoyed it. And I like to make, so I'm doing something that's a little different. And that is that I'm specializing in Portuguese varieties growing on the central coast of California, growing in the Paso Robles area. And so what makes my wine different is it's just quite unique because you can't find that wine unless you really go to Portugal or you go buy go to Total Wine or one of these places where you can buy it.
So the soil there is very different than Napa.
It's not so much the soil. It's
the winds that are coming in from the ocean.
So Gary Eberly, who we were talking about, who was Reagan's friend, he believed, and many of them believe that because the weather's so similar to Napa. And I mean, there's pockets, of course. I'm talking about Paso Robles specifically, but there's a lot of microclimates all through there. So they had found out Santa Barbara County was good for Burgundies, Pinot Noir, and Chardonnay. And then they thought they could do Cabernet. And Gary Eberly and others would say that you can do Cabernet there. What I found always was, and it doesn't mean that ultimately we're not going to be able to make some superior Cabernets there.
Right.
But so far, the really great wines of Cabernet specifically have come from Napa. And I'm not saying that there's not great cabs in Paso Robles, but it's just not the same. But so for whatever reason, there's a slight change in the temperature from Napa.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I feel that these Portuguese varietals, and actually a few, I think the Rhone varietals and a few others, you can make the best wines out of those specific grapes in that area.
Interesting.
And that's how I got into
Makes
it.
sense.
You haven't tried it, but it is
No, 'cause
really
you wouldn't let me.
excellent wine. If somebody was
kidding.
interested in getting the wine, how do
Yeah,
they?
it's really
get
simple.
that?
It's DevinNunesWines.com.
Okay.
DevinNunesWines.com, and it's a fun project, and I hope people like it. And I do make a Cabernet called Patriot Cabernet.
Woohoo! Okay.
Wow.
Devin, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. You guys are very kind. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week. We look forward to being with you next week. And don't forget to share this podcast with others.